Welcome to Around the House, presented by Boss Services. This is the show that helps you around the house. Your complete source for all your home questions, featuring in-depth interviews with the best home services experts in the industry. And now, here are your hosts, Boss Services owners and authors, Jeff and Jerry Street.
Hey, Jerry, how's it going?
Jeff, I'm fabulous. How are you?
Oh, I am super duper as always.
So, super amazing, unicorns and rainbows.
Yep, pretty much how I live my life.
Got it. So, what are we doing here today?
Well, we're going to talk about a topic that you may or may not have experience with.
So, anything.
Yeah.
Got it.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Fire and water damage. Boom.
Fire and water damage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one thinks about that.
No.
No,
They don't.
No.
They don't. You know who does think about that?
Who thinks about that?
My wife. My wife thinks about that because we have a bucket collecting water in our basement from our dripping shower right now. She thinks about that.
So, water damage. So, there's your water damage.
Yeah, not completely damaged yet. We're still we're in restoration phase soon. Once we identify the leak.
Yeah, so you have a bucket of water. And I've had sump pump issues. So,
Yeah.
I get it.
Luckily, I have not had that yet.
Yep,
Yeah.
I have 2 sump pumps. They run pretty much constantly 9 months out of the year, and if they stop, we flood. So yeah,
That sounds like a good time.
it's something to keep an eye on.
Do you just keep like a kayak or an inflatable boat or something in your basement just in case?
That is brilliant.
I'm an
is
idea guy.
Brilliant. I should clear out the basement and turn it into a swimming pool.
Yeah, turn the pumps off. See how filled it gets. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like where this is going.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You can cut a hole right into your floor in your living room, and you can just drop right down in there.
Gotcha.
Like a fireman coming down a pole.
So here's the plan. I'm going to flood my basement. I'm going to turn it into a swimming pool with a kayak, and then I'm going to call our guest today.
Yeah,
to clean it all up.
see, a full circle right there.
Yeah.
You have fun. You got guys to clean it. Everybody wins. So let's dig into it.
So who do we have today?
We have Russ and Jon from, this is a big name, ready?
I'm ready.
Towne Fire and Water Damage Restoration. And if you can imagine what they do fire and water damage restoration.
Yep.
Yeah.
Industry leaders in taking the water out of your basement,
Yeah.
whether you put it there on purpose or not.
Yeah. And drying it out and taking out, everything else too, the mold and
Whoa.
I don't think they take the fire out, but they do clean up after the fire was there.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah, let's dig in.
Okay, episode 2. We're here with Russ and Jon with Towne Fire and Water Damage Restoration. Hey, guys.
Howdy.
So, what do you do more of? Are you burning stuff down, or are you saving it from the water? What do you do more of?
I would say frequency-wise, we do more water because they're smaller jobs, but we do quite a bit of fire as well. So it's probably about equal.
Yeah. Well, where there's fire, there's water, right? You're putting it out. Somebody's
yes.
putting it out, so that's a mess. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the business.
My parents actually started our family business in 1979, so kind of grew up doing it, middle school, high school, and then college. And then once after college, just kind of came, what I was going to do. So that's how I became part of it.
A lot of us got in the trades that way, slave labor as we're young, and it turns into a career.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, mine was kind of just right place, right time. I was pretty young, really just figuring out what it was that I wanted to do in life, and it's hard to believe that was 17 years old. So now that I'm 40, quite a long ways to do this. So it's pretty rewarding, though.
Yeah. So again, an early start. Then, how long you been doing it?
God, what is that?
23 years.
Yeah, 23 years now.
Yeah,
already.
Yeah. Most of your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I'm in 28 years of HVAC now, so it's the majority, right?
Wow.
Yep. So let's dig in. Let's dig into what you guys do and how you do it and all that. So summer water damage. What's the most common cause of water damage in the summertime? Like what do you guys see a lot of? What's your day look like?
I would say around this part of the country, it's generally, weather related. Unfortunately, it's kind of gross, but a lot of what we see is, backups and sewage and, you see supply lines and things like that, but more frequently it has something to do with the drain, it feels like lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think storm work where you actually have flooding events where you get hit heavy with rains, sump pump failures, that type thing, and then also storms that go through, rip roofs off, that kind of thing. So it floods inside that way. That, and then really, just like you said, just the general supply lines, sump pump softeners, dishwashers, that kind of thing. So it's kind of.
Yeah, so anything internal in the house, it's maintenance. It's keeping drains well maintained and cleared, and and again, that's a little bit of in our world as far as roots growing through drains and backups and all of that, and it's got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, we don't get a lot of it, but every once in a while we have spigots. Over the wintertime, they froze.
Sure.
Springtime, early summer, you should get those, and then people go out to wash their car, do the yard, that kind of thing, and then they find out they're flooding their basement at the same time.
Right. So as far as storm damage goes, you're finding just leaking foundations, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, usually with a storm, it has something to do clearly with rain,
Sure.
Or a tree goes through, the roof, or tree falls, even more wild. But that's kind of the unfortunate part is usually if you're having some sort of severe weather-related incident, insurance and coverages, I'm sure we'll get into some of that a little bit later, but that's kind of what makes, the whole ordeal a little bit challenging to figure out for the homeowner, unfortunately. So some of that's just not covered. So that's something to keep in mind.
Sure. Do you deal with like flood plains then? Like places that commonly flood, or is that something different?
Seems like a lot of those we do get the calls for them, but those are pretty good sized losses, and unfortunately most times a lot of people don't have insurance, and that's what most people their go to. And if they're facing a $50,000 problem real quick, we'll look at them, but we don't do a whole lot. And
Sure.
The FEMA flood work did some years ago, but they're just nightmare stories of getting paid and that whole thing. So honestly, we try to stay away from that.
Well, every home insurance thing I've ever filled out asks if you're in a flood plain. So there's got to be something to that. Like we're all trying to stay away from that. Yeah. So do you find again related to outside flooding is it ever like gutter related? I mean, drainage from roofs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've always told everybody you could have the perfect foundation, but if you don't have the water running off and away from the house properly, it will flood. And
right.
Sometimes some of our homeowners cannot figure out what's going on, and it's simple. Gutters are full. It's just running straight down the side of the house and going into the basement. So one, keep them clean, and then two, sometimes they have gutters, they have them cleaned out, but they go down the downspout and they dump out a foot away from the foundation wall, which really doesn't do a lot of good. So a lot of times those extensions are huge things for the short term, at least, to get those extensions on to get 10, 15 foot away from the house, and that usually takes care of it.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of sump pumps that are pumped right outside of the house, and it's just coming right back in. Yeah, absolutely. So are there any tips when you're out inspecting? What are you looking for? What are you telling homeowners to look for, and what kind of advice are you giving?
Yeah, it kind of what he says when you're thinking about the gutters and things like that. If we go in and we don't have that, smoking gun, if you will, the pipes leaking, whatever it is, that's the first place you go. Right out to the outside. You're going to see what the gutters look like. You're going to see if everything's functioning properly coming off the roof and actually getting into the gutter. Mm-hmm. We've had situations, where, especially if the gutters are running down into the ground, everyone makes the assumption that they're going somewhere. We've had situations in the past where we pull out, 3 feet of compacted dirt and tree limbs and all that's going down into the ground. And then the water's just clearly going to come right back up, and it doesn't matter. You can have, a bulletproof basement, but if you put water on it, it's coming back through. So I would, nowadays everybody wants to, DIY it. I would just say call a pro, which I'm sure you guys, you can only take that so far, before you find yourself in a pickle. And I always kind of compare like the water loss stuff to, driving around on bad brakes, can kind of hear the noise, and it's time to call somebody professionally. Otherwise it's just going to get more and more expensive, with the molds and not saving materials because you're not getting to it quickly. Mm-hmm. That's probably the most common thing we see. So the tip would be call me.
There you go. The tip is call Russ.
Right.
Another thing that's missed too is a lot of times people have found the dirt against the house is sloped the wrong way. it seems it's pretty obvious, but you see that a lot too, where it pulls back against the foundation. So I tell them to bring in dirt or build it up to get it sloped away from the home. Because a lot of times if the house isn't draining properly, it'll actually have a part of my, and I hate to admit this, but my house one side is like this, but it's dripping and creating that valley. And if I don't do something about it, it's going to be in my house. So you just build it up and level it so it goes away from the house.
Yeah, sometimes you're also making the assumption too that because you look at it, you see rocks, and you're like, oh yeah, no, it's definitely going that way. But you go to do a little bit further investigating, and sometimes that slopes like that, and the rocks are like that. So get you in trouble real quick.
Yeah. So again, what's your most common call? Like, what do you run the most of? What do you see the most of? If there is,
it feels like lately mold.
Yeah.
I don't know. That seem fair to you?
That's tough. If it's mold, then it's also a lot of times it's back to a water source.
Right, and I guess that's something we haven't really touched on too much is the mold, because that's the byproduct of this reoccurring and being wet all the time. Right. How quickly does a water damage situation turn into mold? Like, what's that look like?
They say perfect conditions, it's 72 hours.
Oh, wow.
Perfect conditions.
Sure.
It needs a food source, temperatures, that type of thing. But I think if you had a water loss in a finished basement and you don't do anything with it, I'd probably say 5 to 7 days. Would you think that's probably about right?
Yeah. Probably like the big trouble people get into is your brain kind of, it just clicks and you're thinking, I need to add heat, which is the polar opposite of what you should be doing. So the perfect absolute storm is homeowner, leaves house, pipe breaks 3 seconds after they leave, because that's what always happens. And then they thought ahead and they thought, we're not going to let the pipes freeze, so we'll crank the heat up. You come back a week and a half later and you had that thermostat on 75 or 80. Mm-hmm. Bingo. I mean, you're going to have a mess real fast in that situation.
Well, because you're creating a humid situation at that point, right? It's humidity.
And a lot of it.
Yeah, right. So what's a typical, or maybe there's not a typical, but what's a typical cleanup consist of? Like, not necessarily, like the process of it. What's that look like?
Well, I would say like the best case is you get in there, extract all the water. Obviously you're going to figure out what type of flooring goods there are. Our goal is to, we don't want to be invasive. We're trying to get in, and if we can get in there and remove baseboards and, potentially some carpet pad or something of that nature, dry it out. The industry standard is, 3 to 4 days. And if we can get that dry when we go back on the back end, throw some more pad down, put the base trim back if we were able to save it. If it was real wood, move on. That's the best case. The worst would be sewage or something like that, because our industry, whenever you have any type of sewage, which we would call category 3, it's super invasive. You're taking everything out: carpet, pad, drywall, tack strip, baseboard, anything that it touches. So that's the bad one, because then, on the back end of that, you not only had to suffer through, whatever our drying process is, then at that point you're waiting on insurance. You got to put it back. The misconception, unfortunately, in our industry is, we just, call these people, and, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I should be back to normal in a week or two. Mm-hmm. And reality, unfortunately, is that's generally, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
So we want to try to have the homeowner's best interest at hand and try to salvage whatever materials. We rather dry it for 5 days. I know that stinks to a homeowner, because you got to deal with what sounds like turbines in your house. But the reality is, we want to try to dry it out so we can restore them, at least back to some sort of normalcy, ASAP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think initially is just get the bulk water out, truck mount. If it's a foot of water, get it out, and then also focus on people's belongings. We want to try to salvage what we can, because chair, table, whatever, but pictures, things are sentimental. We want to go and salvage as much as we can. Then also as a safety factor, I just did a presentation the other day that people forget. I've seen children going down in their basement and playing in the water. People just forget that safety issue. People get killed that way. It doesn't happen often, but it does. So safety-wise is to make sure the electrical component is taken care of first.
Sure, absolutely. When there's standing water where there's not supposed to be, it's mixing with its surroundings, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't always think about what that could be. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So what are some tips that you give homeowners in general Is there any maintenance items inside that that you guys generally talk about, or is it mainly just the storm damage that you see? Because a lot of this stuff is just going to happen. This is going to be a broken pipe scenario. This is going to be a backed up, water line.
One of the things that we try to do is tell our customers we have plumber shutoff tags, which you put on the main, educate them that where it's at, so if they do have a problem, you'd be amazed how many people have no clue.
A fast response on that. Once you find something's leaking, how do you turn it off?
Yep.
That's huge.
Get it turned off. Then also I think the sump pump conversation we've had a little bit is either get it serviced all the time or just check it yourself and keep it clean. A lot of times those things have issues just because it picks up debris and junk. Well,
it's something we take for granted, right? Yep. It's working. It was working the last time I saw it. It's only been down there for 10 years. Mm-hmm. How many cycles is that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other part of that too is people, they don't even, most of the time they find out their shutoff doesn't work is when they need to.
When you need it. Yeah.
So you really want to be able to get out there, kind of hold their hand a little bit. Hey, this is where the shutoff is. And then also too, there are other, areas of the home where you can upgrade, some of the materials in the house to help avoid disaster as well, especially like, washers or toilets, you can kind of switch out to some sort of steel braided line, I'm actually, most of my time was spent in Arizona, where, there's a lot more supply and demand for water. So out in that neck of the woods, you would see those types of things break all the time just because the water pressure is, constantly doing this. To where here, you get a lot of well pumps and things like that. It's not quite as, maybe not quite as strong, but, there's not a whole lot. Unfortunately, that's, the pros and the cons of our business. It's super rewarding because you get to help a lot of people out, but most of the time it's always an accident. You can't predict it. So,
right.
There's a little couple things here or there you might be able to do, but unfortunately, I always, all the time I tell people, no one ever wants to talk to me.
Right.
If I'm coming out there, there's generally something unfortunately wrong.
Yeah, you're the bearer of bad news.
I know.
Well, but you're coming to save the problem, right? And I think that's the bigger key is, your business is very customer service focused. Like, you don't have necessarily a product per se, right? You're there for the client 100%. And I think that shines through in the way that you guys operate and how you go about your day, how you do your daily stuff. So, we appreciate that being in customer service ourselves. We recognize that you really have to have the client at heart. You have to know what you're doing, right? But it's really focused on that client.
Right.
Yeah.
They can also kind of a little bit different type of maintenance, but their insurance policy.
Good point.
Probably 5-10 years ago, they started changing a lot when the economy was kind of bad news. Insurance companies would cut back a few things, but people didn't understand it or realize it. So it's worth sitting down with your agent at renewal and go through it. Sump pumps is a good example. Usually is limited or no coverage on sump pump failures, and majority of the people that have those losses that we go visit don't know that, and they found it the hard way.
Sure.
So just knowing that policy really well, what you have, don't have, that kind of thing. Deductibles. Some people have no clue.
Right. Right. You just, again, you take it for granted that you're insured, and then when you need it, is it there or not? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you always hear that the same. I've probably heard this a gajillion times, but people like to fall back to, well, I had insurance for 30 years, I'm covered.
Yeah.
It just doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, it's hard to tell people, especially older couples. I've been with them for 42 years,
right?
And I'll be the first to tell them, 42 years, 42 minutes. It doesn't matter,
right?
Unfortunately, it really doesn't.
Yeah,
Sure,
you either have the coverage or you don't. Yep. Unfortunately.
Yeah. So, what did we not touch on? What else did you guys want to talk about? Services. We're talking about fire restoration, water restoration. What else? We talked about mold. What else you got?
I think on the storm situation, I do this at home. It's kind of routine, but in my area, probably up here a little bit, it was last Monday, I believe, storms came through. And I think people don't prep what they should. Simple stuff you see in the news. But one is be weather aware, like you hear in the news. Just pay attention. You see people out doing whatever, they have no clue it's coming. With the apps and everything you have available to us, you should know it's coming. And then doing so, make sure you got your cell phones are charged. If you have a storm shelter or something, make sure it's ready to go. It's simple stuff. And then, simple of, I'm really anal about a lot of stuff, but it's like your garage doors. I get my garage door almost ready to go if I lose power, because it's a pain in the butt to get to it, to undo it, whatever. So it's just laying it out. So that way, if it does go out, you're ready to rock and roll. And some people they don't prep at all. We just live where this day and age, they don't think that we'll be without power for 2 or 3 or 4 days. And there's people that just went through that they went 3 days without any power, and it's 90 degrees. It's miserable. And it's a safety risk for older people.
Yep.
So I think this, in the storm conversation, just the prep, you need to put a little more focus on that.
Yeah, and in the power situation, having a generator, whether it be a whole home or a portable or something that you're ready, to get going. I have 2 sumps in my basement, and I have a generator also, because without that generator, my basement's wet 9 months out of the year. Like I'm in the water table, and if those things weren't running, I would be flooded quickly. So that generator saves everything, So yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I would also say too, it's just important. I actually got a dose of my own medicine as to what I'm about to say, but if you have a storm related event, after that storm was over, I live in Goshen, so it was sheer chaos over there, trees down, all that fun stuff. But I think it was, I think I called you Saturday or something. I'm like, I hadn't been out to my garage. I go look at, I've surveyed the house, walked around, took a peek at it. But I go open up the garage door, and there's a half a sheet of drywall hanging from the ceiling above one of the cars. So, I think once you have these events, it's important to, do your homework, make sure that there's nothing, look for water staining on the ceilings. These events not always are going to bring the amount of rain that's going to, slap you in the face. There are situations where you're going to have your eyes open, and, here I am preaching to the choir, because that's exactly what happened to me. So,
well, we're all guilty, right? Yeah. So if someone has a water event, this is what I'm learning here today, water event, which I don't want, I guess.
Right.
How do they reach you? How does anybody find you?
Yeah, a lot of our stuff, is referral. So more often than not, it depends on the time of the day. They're going to, if it's your regular business hours, they're going to reach, someone live in the office. If it's after hours, they're going to reach our service. And then from that point, it's really just giving the information, so we can give them a call back. And then we try to, we're out of Elkhart. So, an example like this, it's an hour away from here. So what we want to do is receive all the information, and then immediately, I don't know what my average time is, but I would bet you that it's less than 5 minutes when I'm calling somebody back. They're going through something, and information, just, wanting to speak to somebody to understand what's going on. Some issues are going to be a lot bigger than others, but we want to try to understand what's going on so we can make the proper decision, to help educate the homeowner, get out on site, look everything over, create some sort of a game plan for them so they could figure out, what they want to do moving forward. The biggest question with that is always going to be money, so we want to try to, unfortunately, most people think, this is $400 or $500 issue. And in reality, I think the national average for water loss is like $3,800 just to dry it out.
Sure.
So we want to get out there, figure out what's going on, and, hopefully we can, get them headed in the right direction quickly.
Well, and like you said, time is key. So you're trying to make good decisions fast.
Right.
Whatever that might be. Yeah.
Well, especially depending on the materials too. You think of wood floors and things like that, drywall, the quicker that we're able to get to those materials, by far the more likely are that we're going to be able to salvage them.
Sure. Well, any other tips that you guys have that might want to share, or did we cover everything?
I would just say that it's really important, especially like for a business like, Towne Fire and Water Restoration. We don't charge for inspections. So it's really important on the front end, to just make the call. I know, it's not a big deal. Well, sometimes it is. And, if you neglect the problem, like I mentioned earlier, it just gets way more invasive.
Right.
If we can get out there and do what we got to do, the chances of us, salvaging something or not having, remember, like I was talking about all the repairs, if we can get in there on the front end and try to minimize all that stuff, it's just far less of a headache for a homeowner. So that would be my tip. Just call. don't hesitate to call. Make sure you make the right decision on the front end.
And as a homeowner, do your research. Unfortunately, they have about 5 minutes to do it. It's tough because a lot of people asking me why we don't do TV commercials and a lot of that type stuff, which name recognition is good, but for us, I always ask people when did you plan to have a fire or plan to have a flood? You don't.
Right.
So unfortunately, these people are scrambling. So you got to rely on people. If you have HVAC, technician refer to us, a plumber, call your insurance agent. I mean, we're not perfect, but I think they probably know of us. I say call your agent, feel them out. The one thing that we're not, a lot of restoration companies are on program work. So, again, we do mostly insurance. A lot of it's insurance work. And if you were to call your agent with a loss, it'll just go to the insurance company, and then they'll hook up a restoration contractor that's on their program. And we survive not being on programs. Most of them are, because there's so many. The focus is on so much more, in my opinion, than the actual service to get out there at a certain time to do this, do that. Mm-hmm. Your quality is not going to be there. It's all about just satisfying that insurance company so that phone keeps ringing in the future.
Well, it's a very good point to know who your client is, right?
It's tough for them because they don't have a lot of time.
Absolutely. You want, again, right? Time is of the essence. You want to make good decisions as quickly as you can. And that's a tough one. And who do you work for? Are you working for the insurance company or the client? And Correct. That's a tough one too. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's all good points. If you need these services from Jon and Russ, how will you get a hold of them?
Well, you can look them up on the old interwebs at, what do you got there? Townerestoration.com. And that is Towne, so not the traditional spelling of town. And then you can give them a call on the old telephone at 269-350-9174.
Boom. Give them a call.
Yeah. They'll fix your problems.
Even if you made them. Well, Russ, Jon, I appreciate you guys coming in today and talking everything that we don't want to have happen. So we appreciate your expertise.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right.